There is a lot of conversation around this topic of burnout, but I want to talk a little bit about the phase before burnout that we don't really pay much attention to, and the phase that then results in so many women reaching the point of burnout when the signs could have been noticed earlier on, when something could have been done earlier on. And the problem with this phase, this kind of pre-burnout phase, is it's not as dramatic perhaps as burnout. It's not she's not yet collapsing. She doesn't take sick leave. There's no crisis happening. In this phase, you are still delivering, still attending meetings, still getting things done, still doing so pretty well. So, on the outside, when we're in this phase of burnout, whether it's you as an individual or people in your team, it's so interesting to notice how she is still looking as capable as ever. And so it is very easy to overlook the shift, the change that is perhaps not so obvious to the naked eye, but is happening nonetheless. The thing about this phase is that even the individual who's going through the phase may not even notice that she's going through it. She might, but she may well not. Or she might, and she might just push it aside because she's more tired. She has less energy. She feels less willing to go above and beyond, although she possibly still does. She's less creative or inventive. You are less driven, less decisive, less motivated. You haven't yet fully burnt out, but you have started to quietly disengage, to pull back. And it is in this phase where I believe that we need to pay much closer attention to ourselves as women, as individuals, and as organizations to the women that we employ before they get to that point of burnout. Now, the tricky thing about burnout is that it doesn't arrive with fireworks or a big brass band to announce that it's arrived, it's here I am, I'm burnout. Burnout begins very subtly and generally with emotional exhaustion, which is perhaps more easy to notice. We can see that emotional exhaustion, but it's harder to put our finger on than perhaps physical exhaustion. Because this emotional exhaustion comes with something that is not visible. It's not a thing that we can see. It's not a physical ailment as such. But the things that create this emotional exhaustion include identity strain. They include nervous system overload, chronic vigilance, doing everything right, making sure that I'm always on top, that I'm always being good, carrying too much responsibility for too long. And when we are holding these things, then this often leads to that very subtle flight response before the collapse. So we're in flight. We're not dramatically quitting. We're not having a huge, as I say, fireworks blowout, but withdrawing emotionally, protecting our energy. That again, that quietly disengaging. I'm just going to step back from this to protect myself. Now, Gallup's workplace research consistently shows that employees who frequently experience burnout are significantly more likely to be actively seeking other employment. This is huge for organizations who are supporting women, because these women are more likely to disengage. They are less likely to feel connected to their organization and more likely to experience health challenges, which impacts the individual and impacts the place where they work. But what is really important here is what I am trying to get across today, that by the time that burnout shows up in the data, where people are leaving, where they are unable to attend work because they are unwell, before that even shows up, disengagement has already begun. And the problem is that for high achieving women who, as I said earlier, continue performing when they are in this phase, disengagement is invisible. You cannot necessarily see it unless you are specifically looking out for it. So what does this look out for? What does this look like? What does disengagement look like? And then what can you look out for in yourself or in your team in order to recognize that disengagement? One of the things that is tricky is, especially when you are a driven woman who is used to achieving, is that it might feel like I'm being lazy. I just can't really be bothered. But and then we berate ourselves for laziness. But it's not a laziness. So if you notice something like doing specifically what's required but no more, as I said, not going the extra mile or not wanting to go the extra mile, maybe it's avoiding extra responsibility, so not actually putting oneself forward for anything else. Perhaps it is saying yes less often. It's pulling back emotionally. It's protecting your energy. It's not pushing for the next level. And interestingly, I'm not saying that these things are bad. Sometimes actually doing this is really good when we are doing it not because of disengagement, when we are doing it because it's, if you for want of a better word, self-care. But when we are doing it because we're disengaged and it's not our norm and we're not really sure why we're doing it, it might be a pre-burnout awareness moment, because it's in that moment where a woman who perhaps once drove herself forward, was energized and excited about things, suddenly starts thinking, I don't know if I really want that promotion. Or, gosh, I just don't know if I can keep this pace up. I don't think that it's worth it. And it's not because she's incapable. It's not because she's become less capable. It's not because her circumstances have changed. But it's because the internal conditions that support her capability have been eroded. They have been broken down internally. She is depleted. She's empty of that oomph. She's lost that drive, the internal battery to just keep giving, to keep showing up. This is where the identity conversation that I love to have is important to have. It is critical to have this identity conversation that sits at the basis of resilience in the moment when, or before the moment where disengagement happens. Because the problem is that most high achieving women are successful because they are incredibly good at what they do, but also because they have been operating from identities like the good girl. Maybe it's the achiever, maybe it's the overfunctioner, the perfectionist. And these identities are rewarded in workplaces and in life. They serve her. they serve her organization because they actually do get results. They drive productivity, they create reliability, but they are not sustainable operating systems, because these identities and the operating systems that they create are driven by a fear of failure, a fear of disapproval, a fear of being seen as not enough, a fear of letting people down. And fear registers to your nervous system as threat. So, what if I let people down? What if I fail? What if I am disapproved of? What if I'm seen as not enough? Physiologically, you are then under threat. And when your nervous system is operating in low grade threat, so it's not a lion or tiger in your path and you've got to run or you've got to fight it, but this low grade threat that I'm always unsafe. When you are there for long enough, what happens is that your nervous system actually adapts to be able to sustain you. So, how does it do this? Well, then it starts to reduce discretionary effort. It wants to conserve energy, so it withdraws. I can't use up more energy because I'm always ready to run or to fight. I've always got to be on my guard. So, as I've said, this is not a laziness issue. It's not a rebellion. It is your very clever nervous system doing exactly what it is there to do. It is there to protect you from the threats around you by keeping you in that state of fight or flight or freeze or fawn that will allow you to keep yourself safe. It will allow you to ensure that you are always protected. So, there's an element to this that I think that organizations often miss, and I talk about this a bit more in episode 111 of The Resilient Working Mum, when I talk about your executive identity. So organizations see performance and they measure output. They evaluate delivery. They want to see what are the results, but they do not measure identity strain, which is what most working mums are living with all the time. So they don't necessarily look at emotional labor or over responsibility. They don't see self-monitoring. They don't see internal pressure. And these are the things that women who are carrying identities like the responsible one or the capable one or the good girl, these are the things that those women experience. And these are the things that exhaust her. And so we do it ourselves, we do it within our teams, we look at ourselves, we look at a team member and we assume, well, she's fine, she's good, she's got it together, until she isn't. And then they lose her. Then they lose her capability. By then it is too late to hold on to the women who actually get results. And so retention risk does not begin when someone resigns. Retention risk begins when somebody subconsciously or consciously checks out and disengages from their work because they lack the capacity to keep showing up and performing at their best. It's really interesting. Gallup's global workplace studies repeatedly show that employee engagement is directly tied to well-being, to clarity of expectations, to psychological safety, to feeling valued. When we can do that, then we keep our employees, we keep ourselves engaged in what we are working on. When stress remains chronically high without the capacity to recover, then engagement drops. Decision-making quality declines rapidly because women's brains are not able to function executively in the way that they can when they feel safe. Creativity diminishes, risk taking reduces, and it's not a motivation problem. I just want to reiterate again, this is a capacity problem. And for working mothers who are carrying dual responsibility, who are working over two domains, that capacity erosion happens even faster than anybody else. They are moving between roles. They are moving between these two places, these two, as I say, domains. They're holding both places equally in their heads and in their bodies, in their nervous systems all day long. And most organizations respond reactively to burnout, which is understandable. They have other areas in which they are focusing, and this need only arises once it is too late. And so what we see, which is amazing, is well-being days, flexible work policies, mindfulness workshops, mental health support, which are all incredibly important. They are all a great sense of support. But what I have seen working with clients over the last few years as these women come through my practice is that they do not address the underlying identity-driven pressure that keeps these women operating in threat mode. If a woman believes that she has to prove her confidence, that she cannot drop the ball, that she has to carry everyone else, that she has to avoid disappointing or letting anybody else down, that woman's nervous system never really lets her rest. It never really actually lets her go into that safe mode. She's always on. Physiologically, she is in a stress response all the time, and all the policies in the world cannot solve that. So then the question to beg is, what actually sustains performance before she reaches this point of disengagement, and certainly before she reaches burnout? Sustainable performance comes from a number of things, all of which form the skill set of resilience. So these include emotional equilibrium, identity stability, nervous system capacity, the internal scaffolding, if you like, that gives her the permission to slow down, to pause, to say no, to delegate, to be imperfect. And whilst we may say, oh, but we give that space, it is in her getting to know that she is allowed to do that. Again, as I say, the internal permission to do that, that creates a peak performance rounded leader. It's not a wellness program. This is a leadership development. When women build internal capacity, they don't disengage. They don't just quietly push through, sitting over there in the corner. Oh, I've just got to get through this. When women build internal capacity, they are able to remain clear and creative and steady and engaged and strategic. And it's not because the workload has lessened. It's not because things have been taken off her plate. It's not because life slowed down. It is because her internal system has been strengthened. She's built the internal muscles that allow her to keep herself certain and steadfast, and her nervous system to know that she is safe without it needing to protect her all the time. And so if you are an individual listening to this and you have noticed yourself pulling back, if you are a woman who feels less spark, you feel less hunger, less drive, less energy to get up and do the next thing, it's not because you are lazy. I've experienced this and I berated myself for a long time. Oh, what's wrong with you? You're not losing your edge. You are protecting yourself. And that protection is a sign of depletion. And the incredibly exciting thing is that depletion can be addressed. If you are an organization or part of the leadership of an organization listening, and you are serious about retaining high performing women, this is the work. Internal capacity building of your valued team is going to be the best thing that you can do for both you and for them and for your organization. This is how you build resilience that sits inside leadership development, not outside of it, not in her personal life. Performance sustainability is not about driving your team harder, getting more time, getting more done, spending more time doing it. Performance sustainability is about stabilizing the human system underneath performance so that that system allows the women who work for you to think clearly, to be creative, to make decisions with ease, to see the organizational system flourish as a result of her steady, capable, beautifully aligned human system. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with something that you can write down to remind yourself what to look out for. Burnout is loud. Burnout is easily seen and experienced when it arrives. But as I say, it doesn't arrive with trumpets and fireworks. It arrives with disengagement. And disengagement is not loud. Disengagement is quiet. And that quiet phase before burnout is where change is still possible. If you are a woman who feels yourself in that space, that disengaged space before burnout, I would love to support you in rebuilding your internal capacity before burnout becomes inevitable. I would love for you to book a resilience audit. It is a free 30-minute call. Use the links in the notes provided. We are going to look at where identity strain is showing up in your life, how your nervous system capacity is currently operating. We're going to look at the early signs of disengagement that you may not have noticed. And we are going to create a 30-day plan to create the capacity that will allow you to feel clear and steady and energized again. You do not need to work harder. You do not need to push harder. All you need to do is to strengthen that system that lies underneath your ability to perform at your best. And if you are in leadership or in HR and this conversation has sparked some thoughts, this is exactly the work that I am increasingly bringing into organizations to help high-performing women build emotional equilibrium, internal capacity before disengagement turns into attrition. You do not have to wait for burnout to intervene. Capacity can be built early before that happens. And when it is, you don't just retain those women in your teams and have them holding on. You also retain your brilliance. And that is what we want for women who are working in organizations, who are coming home to families at the end of the day.